Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. And welcome back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. Hey, everybody. I've got Kimber Foster with me. She is an author of a book that she published just last year, right around this time, actually, called The Year of Thorns, What to Expect When Divorcing a Narcissist. So she's going to tell us all about that. We're going to get to know a little bit more about her. And then we're going to get some great little nuggets on, are you possibly in one of these marriages? Maybe not. Are you seeing some of those behaviors? We'll see. So, but first, Kimber, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, do you see that smile that she just had? Isn't that pretty awesome? I swear to God, when I popped open StreamYard, which is what I use to do these conversations, I swear to God, it was Goldie Hawn look at me in the face.
I get that daily.
Yeah. And I had to step back and just, think how lucky that, that they get to hang out with Kimber. You're welcome. So, Kimber, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Like where you grew up, what was the complement of your family, and what was it like to be Kimber as a kid?
I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a very nice, safe, conservative town in Michigan. I had two older brothers. I was an oops. So my brothers were 12 and 14 when I was born.
Oh, wow.
And I was a big surprise, as you can imagine. And my dad, it was the traditional. My mom was an at-home mom. My dad went to work. He ran the family business. But growing up, I was alone a lot. My brothers, when I was in kindergarten, they were in college. So I think, looking back, I think that's where I learned to be a people pleaser. I always felt like I needed to please people to get their attention, to have love. And that kind of what led me on my path down the lane to being an empath.
You're not the first person that I've had the opportunity to interview about a narcissist relationship that is also an empath. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So your dad ran the family business. What type of business was that?
General contractors, 5 generations, all the men in the family have taken over. Yeah, a very successful general contractor. They were married over 60 years, really great parents.
Wow.
Good role models.
Tell me about your childhood. Were you into anything? Cheerleading, sports, dance?
Oh, yeah, I was the overachiever.
Oh, yeah.
I was student council president, cheerleader, homecoming. I did all that in high school and college. Greek system. I did it all.
What was your sorority?
I was an Alpha Chi Omega.
Alpha Chi Omega. Okay, great.
Brother.
We're made to talk to each other, I'm telling you. Yeah, if you can't go Greek, go Teak. I always say that, but that's always funny. I was actually
Good days.
I was actually an Alpha class member. So, a re-beginning of our chapter at the college that I went to. But that's great. So did you go to college?
Yeah.
Wait, you were an Alpha Chi Omega.
Okay.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
I went to Western Michigan University, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Not too far from home, but far enough.
I was the exact same way. I was like about 150 some odd miles from home. Just enough that if I got homesick, I can race home and do some laundry. But far enough that parents couldn't turn up on my doorstep whenever they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. What did you study in school?
I had actually 3 degrees: psychology, communications, and business. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still really don't know.
Did you get all 3 of those degrees in 4 years?
I did. Yep. And I waitressed and bartended too. And part of the Greek system and a student council and all that. I was a busy girl, but I loved it. It was so much fun.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine that. I mean, I've got a major and a minor, and I barely made it in 4 years. I also was part of the Greek system. I also was a cheerleader. I was a bass, obviously. It wasn't flying anywhere.
His husband was a cheerleader too.
Okay, we'll get into that here in a minute. Is that how you met?
Yeah, we met in college.
Was he your base?
No, I wasn't a cheerleader in college.
Oh, okay.
Later on, he was.
Okay.
Um,
Actually, this is a family show. No, it's not actually. It's not a family show at all. My last episode was the swearing therapist, and she had f-bombs rolling all over the place. So I think we can have a little couple.
that was my small attempt at humor.
No, it was very good. It was very good. So, but you met in college. Did you get married right out of college?
We did.
Wow.
24. Yeah, right out of
24.
college.
What did you end up doing as for work, or were you a stay at home or?
No, I worked. So I got really involved in planning events. I planned the Greek week in college. And right out of college, I ended up planning special events for charity. So I was with that charity for quite a few years.
Cool.
The March of Dimes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so I planned all their walkathons and bid for bachelors and golf outings, and I loved it. I also felt like I was making a difference.
Yeah, it's amazing that you say that. So I'm an endurance coach. I help people through marathons and ultra marathons and triathlons and Ironman triathlons and all that stuff. And I did numerous amounts of marathons for charities. And there was a couple times we did it for teams. Mm-hmm. So the Chicago Marathon, we did a couple of times, and we did it for the PKD Foundation, which is the Polycystic Kidney Disease Foundation. And we did it as a team twice. We raised about $100,000, and we always had that person like you. We had that person with us. We'd always, once we started, we talked to them. They would help us, where we put the money, help us set up the websites, help us, get started, help us, design our events that we did in order to raise the money enough to then run the marathon. So if you were like that, I praise you, because those people deal with a lot of stuff, and they're just, most of them are just great people. So I imagine that, just from knowing a little bit about you, I'm sure that's exactly the way you were. What a great job. You get to meet.
Met a lot of great people.
What did your husband end up doing?
Well, it was funny. When we were in college, we both worked at bars together. And then when he graduated, he ended up being a general manager for a number of those bars and restaurants. So we had completely different schedules. I was working 8 to 5. He's working 2 to 2. Still kind of living the college party bar scene. After a year, I said this wasn't working out like I had hoped.
That was that third year.
Yeah, it was a really difficult first year. There was a lot of red flags even that first year, but that's when I kind of said either, change or I'm out. And so he got a job with a corporate big company, and thus I became married to a salesman.
Oh.
Okay. And then we moved every 3 years after that, living all over the world.
Wow. So in the beginning, things obviously were good. He did exactly what you asked him to do.
The goal when we were dating was to own his own bar, but I think he realized quickly that you have to be there 24/7. Otherwise people steal. It was, long hours. And it was a good thing. It was a good thing for us both.
Okay.
That he changed to corporate.
So give us a quick list of some of the places that you ended up living. Well, at least give us the list of the places that you liked living.
I loved everywhere we moved. And I was lucky I moved with the March of Dimes for 3 of the moves. And then I made the jump into the corporate world. I lived in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee. I lived in Philadelphia, Chicago, back to Michigan a few times in between there. And then I lived in Ireland and Puerto Rico.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I grew up in Chicago, but Ireland. Wow. Yeah. How did you like that?
I loved it. It's a rainy place, but it's just beautiful. The people are so wonderful.
So is the Guinness stronger over there and this here, or is that just?
I think it is. I think it really is.
I just got back from London and I got Guinness on tap, and I didn't taste the difference. I'm a Guinness fan, so I like it, and just it's rare to find, at least down here in Florida where I live now. It's hard to find a pub that actually has it on tap. So I was heaven in London. Everywhere I went, they had it on tap. So was happy about that. So, All right. So you lived all these different places. And you had mentioned some red flags coming up. When did things did you really feel like they started to have a little of a downslope?
He had lied to me. He cheated on me. He gambled away all the money we got from our wedding. I didn't sign up for this. But no one in my family's have ever been divorced. So I took my vows seriously, and he made a change. And so I thought it was a new beginning. But as the years went by, as his career grew, so did his ego. And so did his need for control. And moving every 3 years, too, also led to my isolation and alienation from a support group, too. He was my world, my focus. And then my kids later on.
Were you still in the process of doing these moves every 3 years when you had your children?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we moved to Ireland, I just had my third child. So he was 6 months old when we moved to Ireland. And I didn't have a green card there. So I became the quintessential, at-home mom, executive wife, raising the 3 kids overseas. I got involved, though, with the PTA and all that stuff.
They have that in Ireland?
Sure.
All right.
But they do have alcohol at school functions and sporting events. So, yeah, I moved back to the States and I went to a football game. I'm like, where's the beer booth?
Oh, man. So, all right. So in Ireland, what ages are your kids now?
Oh, they're grown. So I have a 28-year-old son in Dallas, a 25-year-old daughter in Miami, and then my youngest is in college in Utah.
Park City. Beautiful.
All skier.
They're all successful?
Yeah, they're all great.
Wow. No matter what you went through, you still ended up being a great mom.
And a wonderful family. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you're mentioning that, okay, so he's getting promoted. He's gaining this ego, which, I mean, you can't blame. As you get up and you start becoming the boss, you have to start making changes. You actually end up becoming more isolated. He would end up being isolated at work because the friends he had either were now his subordinates or he passed them up. And then you learn to be a boss, not a friend, which is very tough, by the way. And I found that to be tough. So do you think that's kind of the way it started to happen? He started getting more control at work, therefore he wanted more control at home.
That's interesting. I think it's more of his deep sense of insecurities that projected his need for control and to be the center of attention. He had this grandiose sense of superiority, and when he walked in a room, he always had to be the center of attention, and he would put people in their place either through humor or cracking jokes or just to make himself feel so much more superior.
Yeah, that is about the textbook definition of narcissist right there when you started to figure that out. But did that happen? Was that something that just was from the beginning? That was just something that you thought was part of his personality just from the beginning? Or
it was arrogance and insecurity. I thought, gosh, he was so talented at putting people down in such a funny way. But I realized later that it wasn't funny. A lot of people didn't take it that way. And it was just to boost his own ego. Yeah.
So about where and when did you feel like it got bad to the point where it started going through your head about maybe possibly getting out?
Yeah. So our oldest son had a lot of health issues and challenges. And I was the primary parent. My ex couldn't deal with any dysfunction, any sickness. He was a completely detached parent. He was a great provider, providing financially for our children. He was always there for vacations. But when it came to going to surgeries and seeing doctors and therapies, he was completely absent. I really struggled. It was tough. Sometimes I get home and I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. I need someone to help me. And he just wouldn't help. So that was a big struggle on our relationship. I found too that as time progressed, he became more and more verbally abusive to me and then later physically abusive.
Oh.
So when we were living in Puerto Rico and some of those places, I would call for help and the police wouldn't speak English, or I was kind of caught in a catch-22. I couldn't put him in jail because we relied on his income. And I couldn't just pack up 3 children and leave a foreign country. I had nowhere to go, didn't have a home base, because we were together essentially our whole life since college. So,
Wow. So you were basically captive.
yeah, no, there wasn't. And I made the mistake at one point of expressing my desire to leave. And he attacked me and said he would destroy me. And it was awful. It was to the point where I actually tried to take my life because I felt like I had no out. So,
Yeah, I mean, you actually physically did make the attempt?
yeah, I did.
Oh my God. That's
Being a narcissist spins the narrative. They make your whole reality is you're on this crazy wheel and they distort everything. And he made me think that my children, I was being a terrible parent. My son was sick because of me. Just there were so many different components. And I just felt like there was nothing I could do and there was no out. And I felt completely at God's mercy. Yeah.
I just can't imagine the helplessness that you must have felt. It must have been so frustrating and just so tough. I can't imagine because, I mean, you had 3 kids. That had to be just for you to even have the thoughts.
Yeah.
Must have been weighing on you.
Well, when you're with a narcissist and in a toxic relationship like that for so long, I lost the person that I was back in college, the student council president, cheerleader, homecoming queen. I lost her along the way. She was gone. I was a husk of the person I was. I wasn't as skinny. I wasn't as fit. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't smart enough. They just break you down until you're a shell.
How old were your children at this point?
My youngest was in grade school, and then I had a daughter in junior high and a son in high school.
Okay, so this had been this had been high school, so it had to be 14, 15. Yeah. So, I mean, you'd been married to this guy for 17, 18 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That sound about right?
Wow. A little longer, yeah.
That's a long time. And when did you feel, let's say that was year 18 or year 17, at which point, if you just counted by the years, do you think got to the point where that's where it got so bad that you were not contemplating suicide at that point, but where, like you said, you were a husk of the person that you were, where you started to feel like that was happening to you, if you can remember like that, or if there's any way for you to look back?
Yeah, it was a good 20 years, but it was a lot of bumps in the road.
Right.
And, there'd be so many times when I would just be ready to pack up and leave, but I'm like, where do I go? Things would blow up. And then he would come in, apologize, take me on these great trips. I mean, we had the perfect Facebook looking life.
Yep.
We were doing all kinds of great things, living the high life, but they were really ugly and dark.
I mean, just the thought of it. Talk to me about one of those dark times. Because I'm trying to, I just want to feel what you were feeling, or get an idea of what you were feeling and what that might feel for somebody else that's going through that, who might not even realize that it's a dark time. They may be just like, well, this is just what marriage is.
Yeah, well, it's just, like I said, it was a complete loss of myself. And I felt there was nowhere else to go. There's nothing I could do. I had so much pain. In my book, I talk about the day I actually left. Have you heard the story of the frog in the boiling water? So if you put a frog in a pot of water that's warm, increase the temperature over time, it will end up boiling to death. But if you throw a frog in that pot of boiling water, it's going to immediately jump out. Right. So I was that frog that was slowly boiling to death. It was like I had a bucket of water, and every drop of abuse over the years and the degrading comments and just accumulated over time until that last drop. And the bucket just spilled over, and it was like a waterfall of just, I can't do this anymore. It was that fight or flight, and that's when you get to that point where you're contemplating suicide. It's just you want out. And it takes a lot to get to that point where you're like, I need to make a change. Otherwise, what else are you going to do? So that's where I got. And one of my favorite quotes that I've heard someone say to me, and I try to encourage this to other people, that if you are in a toxic relationship, you're sad, you're depressed, you feel like there's nowhere else to go. What you're not changing, you're choosing. And I felt like I didn't have an out. Like I didn't have money. I couldn't just pack up my kids. But there were resources. I just kept making excuses and I was scared. I was afraid. And you really need to push those boundaries of fear. And so, yeah, I got to that point and then I got angry and then pulled up my big girl panties and I figured a way out. And it wasn't easy.
That's interesting that you say that you talk about the fear, and how that causes a lot. Now, the fear that you went through is, 100 times more than the comparison I want to make, which is I have the same issue with some of my clients who are taking on some of these big challenges that had never tried before, whether it's to go faster, longer, stronger. Sometimes it's just like, nah, I just want to stay here. Or I have got clients most of my clients are one and done people. They're like, I want to run my first marathon. And they come to me, I get them through it. But I do have about 5, 6 habitual racers. And when a lot of times I mention to them, hey, let's take the next step. If you've been doing Olympic triathlon, let's do a half Ironman. Let's try that. And there's always that, maybe not this time. And I tell them, no, jump in or I'm out. I says, I know I'm only going to do what's best for you. I'm never going to do anything less. So I think it's time for you to take on the next challenge. And a little him and haw, then they finally jump in and they're happy about that. So it's a much, much lower scale than what you went through, but it's something that happens in everyday life and things that can be learned from what you went through, even at a lower or higher scale. So I am very, very happy that you did make that choice. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking. I'm going to get a chance to meet you. But let's talk about that last day. Let's talk about the day or the weeks turning up to your decision to leave and then the execution. So talk to me about like when you finally said, this enough's enough. I need to make a plan and I need to get the heck out of here.
Yeah. Well, we were living in Puerto Rico. We were going to counseling, which later I learned just doesn't work when you're dealing with a narcissistic psychopath, because they'll never take accountability. They'll never take ownership. It's all the blame game. When we moved back to the States, I think he knew I had a foot out the door because I had told him I was going to leave him before. And, then he love bombed me all over, said he wanted to make us work. We moved back to the States. He was actually demoted in his job. So he went from being a big fish to a little fish in a sea of sharks too. So the minute I got back to the States, I hired an attorney. And I had a knee revision on my knee. I used to race downhill skiing back in the day. So I was laid up and she's like, stay as long as you can. And I really thought that staying in the marriage was good for my children. I had a strong sense of, like I said, an obligation to my vows and to my children. But what I realized later was that I was just teaching my children what a dysfunctional relationship is. And I'm glad I finally made the change and the choice to leave. But it wasn't easy. Yeah. So it was back when we got to the States and I gave it a couple years. We tried therapy. It didn't work. And I finally said on our anniversary, I walked out. Wow. Yeah, it was like I said, that bucket, that accumulation of all those drops over time. And this kid started talking to me with just respect, sounded just like him, the verbal abuse coming at me. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I learned that I had to love myself and respect myself and become whole if I wanted to continue to move on and be the parent that my kids deserved.
Just the fact that he got your kids to be like him, that had to just absolutely, since you were the one that was the primary parent, you were the one who was with them all the time. And, oh, wow. Yeah.
We were all on a vacation in a little room, and they just started talking to me with complete disrespect. And there was a lot of other things that happened that today. Not one major thing, but like I said, it was accumulation of many things over time. And that day I snapped, and I had my first ever panic attack. I couldn't breathe. It was like my inner voice or God was telling me, nope, you're done. You got to move on. And it's crazy too, a little funny story. I don't know if it's funny, but they were all supposed to fly back the next day back to Michigan. It was Christmas time, so he had the week off work, and the kids had the week off from school. And I had a brother in Florida, and I said, I'm going to go visit my brother because I needed time to really think and prepare. And just something said I couldn't get on the plane the next day. 2 days later, my dad had a heart attack, and he lived in Florida. So I was there to take care of my dad the next few weeks. But if I had gotten on the plane, I wouldn't have been there for him. So I think it was a little bit of everything. It's like my inner voice needing to save myself, but also God telling me to stay so I could help my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something else. Yeah. And was like saying,
it's like when someone knows the plane's going to crash or something, I just get on the plane.
So your dad lived through that, right?
He did, but you had to go through a couple surgeries to figure out what the problem was, and then had to prepare him for open heart surgery and get everything set up for him before I flew back to Michigan. So I was in Florida, hired my attorney, filed right away. I was done. It takes a lot for an empath or someone like me who's been through years and years of abuse. Like, we keep taking it and taking it and taking it. And whenever we try to speak up or challenge a narcissist, they attack harder and harder, and they put you in your place to silence you because they don't like to be proven wrong or challenged. But when you get us to a point, we're stronger than you think. And that's when that light bulb moment comes on. Yeah, you dig down deep and you find that courage.
That is an amazing bit right there. I'm drawing a blank, but yes, that when you're pushed far enough, that strength will come up. The thing is, and what I like to impart not only to my clients but to other people, is to figure out that you have that strength before you need it. Which is another reason why I enjoy being an endurance coach, and I also coach kids and every other bit, is because I can sit there and talk to people and tell them when they're in other situations. So as a coach, when you get to know your clients, as like myself, you dig deep. I'm not only their running coach, their swimming or biking coach, their obstacle course coach, but I've also become kind of I wouldn't say a therapist. They do throw some stuff at me. I've got some people that their spouses have died in the middle of them training, so I get to hear all that. I'm there to help them through certain things. I'm not the therapist, but I am there as a friend and someone to...
And a lot of it's in the mindset.
Right. So what I love to do is, like, when people like I've got people that do marathons, half marathons and stuff, and then they go through these troubling things, and I'm able to say, listen, you ran 13 miles in a row. Not everybody does that. If you could do that, you can get past this. And it's the same thing. And I tell people, my Ironman people, so an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, get out of the water, get on your bike, ride 112 miles, get off the bike, now run 26.2 miles. And people finish that and they go through something like this. And I'm like, you are an Ironman. You understand that? You have more strength than you can possibly imagine. It's a nice way to bridge the physical and the mental and the physical and the emotional. When one of my clients lost their spouse, and that's basically what it was. It was like, you got this, you can get through it. You need to, obviously the normal things like go see someone, talk to someone. You can do it, but you remember how much strength you've got, what you've done in your life, physical and mental. The strength is there.
But it's changing that narrative. And that's what I needed to do once I got through my divorce to move on. I had to change that narrative that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, lovable, and instead of focusing on my year of struggle, or my year of suffering. Now I focus on my year of thriving and surviving.
Yeah.
It's like changing that whole negative narrative. Yeah.
Oh, but I can't imagine it is like, but you went through over 20 years of that, of somebody beating you down and over. And so, repetition is where things become solidified.
I was a psychology major. I didn't see it. I was conditioned slowly over time. I was that Pavlov's dog, looking for little treats here and there.
And he unfortunately knew manipulation tactics to get you to do that, tore you down. The minute he saw that you were starting to like the wheels started turning about you leaving, he's like, oh, no, let's go on this thing. Let me take you on a trip. And
let me throw you a birthday party.
Yeah. Wow. And you don't even know it's even happening. That's got to be the worst thought.
Yeah. And it wasn't until after I left him and after my divorce that I realized he was a narcissist. And I wrote my book a while ago, before the N-word was so mainstream. I call it the N-word, narcissist. I didn't even realize that I was married to a narcissistic psychopath. It wasn't until I started reading books and I discovered that my story wasn't unique. It was universal. It was textbook. So I took my journal, and that's what my book is about. I turned it into a self-help guide to anybody that's in a toxic relationship. Learn how to identify the narcissistic manipulative traits. So it's my journal, but they insert like 17 different manipulative traits like gaslighting and projection and alienation and all that. For me, it was very therapeutic writing the books. Helped me understand how I'd gotten to that place in my life.
See, that's what this podcast is all about. It's about people just like you that go through these challenges, change their lives, and then share the wisdom and help other people.
I didn't quit my marriage. I survived it.
Yeah.
When I tell everybody, I survived it. And, I have 3 beautiful kids, and there's so many things I am thankful for, and going through the fear and pushing forward and focusing on survival and thriving. And, I wanted to make meaning of what I went through. I really think God's purpose for me was to go through it so I could learn and understand about it and help others now that are going through something similar. I wished I had somebody who would have helped me or guided me, or I could have gone to during that time.
And now you're that person for other people. So if you were to go back and knowing what you know now and look back through your relationship, what would be the first sign that you saw that you now know that you were with a narcissist, that first red flag that you could tell to other people that say, hey, you see this is your first red flag. It doesn't mean that he's a narcissist yet, but here's your first red flag.
Oh, that's one's easy. It's love bombing. They come on so strong and so fast. They make you think that you're everything. They're everything. They'll say, I've never met anyone like you. You're the one for me. And they come on so strong and so fast. You think it's love at first sight, or after 2 weeks, you're like, this is the soulmate. But they come on so strong, so fast because they want to hook you before their mask falls off.
Love bombing so that fast enough to the point where they know not to, they can't make a mistake just yet. In case they make a mistake and they lose their
You're already hooked. Yeah.
You're already hooked.
Yeah.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not one of those people there's always people that like, if you're clinging too fast, you're already out, right? But there are people that like that.
Especially empaths, like people like me. I love the affection. I love the attention. I wanted love so badly.
Yeah.
And, they tend to prey on people like us because we're easily manipulative and controllable.
Yeah, you and I might have that in common. Yeah, I don't know if it's lack of or just the fact that I am. But yeah, so, all right. So if you're one of those people that happens to like the clingy and you like people that are hanging on your word and then giving you compliments back, be careful of the person that you're with, that this might be their way of starting to get their hooks in you. So
Yeah.
that's number one. All right, let's go on with number two.
Well, I think number two would be easier to spot now that I'm older. It's about listening what they have to say. If they never take accountability, if they talk about past relationships that it was the other person's fault, that they're always the victim, that's a big red flag because you can bet they'll talk about you that way someday.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So if the person that you're with just never says, "Oh, that was my fault," or
Right.
"I screwed up," or, I mean, unless you're dating a politician, they don't know how to say that either. But yeah, that was a joke. You can laugh.
That one's pretty easy to say.
But yeah, so okay, that becomes super easy. But I think
And then it kind of goes right back to if they're always putting people down, even if it's in a funny manner, they're always trying to elevate themselves to be superior. The confident one in the group is really arrogance. Watch out for that too.
okay, so you're hanging out at a party, and the person that you're with is putting people down, where at least it seems like he's trying to be playful about it.
Yeah. Or the center of attention, the person that's always got to be on stage.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people that rib, guys get in their ribbing fests, it's supposed to be, it's all in fun. And then, but usually it's like, nah, dude. And they punch you in the arm, and then, you hug it out, but it's not all the time. You know what I mean? This happens probably with a narcissist, maybe a little bit more than often.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want 5. So let's go to number 4.
Their lack of empathy. A narcissist can't be empathetic. They can't put themselves, their mindset just doesn't work that way. They can't put themselves in somebody else's shoes. For them, feelings and anything like that is a waste of time. They can't be bothered. So that would be, someone says, oh, they're sick, too bad. Maybe they didn't eat the right food or something like that. They lack empathy.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law just left her husband, and that just hit the nail on the head for some of the things that her ex-husband was talking about, and that hit the nail on the head. Yeah, he did all that stuff. Never was wrong. Yeah. Well, I'm glad she got out. I also had one of the episodes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, she was in the hospital, and he stopped by when he first dropped her off, and then was every excuse in the book to not be there at the hospital. That's not caring for somebody. I'm not saying that the husband is got a dote every time, depending on what they're in the hospital for, but I mean, I couldn't imagine not, even my mom, I couldn't imagine not spending hours with her when she was in the hospital for numerous different things. I would be by her side. I want to make sure. I mean, that's just caring for someone, but someone not being there,
And I had a dozen of those really earth-shattering experiences in my life. My husband wasn't there. I had a miscarriage and I had to go to the hospital. I went by myself. He wasn't even there with me because he had to work. Worst experiences of my life. The day my youngest son was born, I woke up in a pool of blood, and I'm like, I think something's wrong. I need to go to the hospital. I drove myself to the hospital and he went to work. I kid you not, because, his job was more important.
You know what I mean?
The way they twist the words, and that's number 5 is gaslighting. They'll twist your reality, and they will bend anything to make it about them and make you question your reality constantly. They'll say things like, you're crazy, you're overreacting, you're making a big deal out of nothing. When you say to somebody oh, that really hurt my feelings that you weren't there for me that day in the hospital. And if you're making a big deal out of nothing, what could I have done for you? Meanwhile, I'm providing work for you and I'm making all this money so you can live in this giant house. They spin it, that whole narrative.
Wow. So there are 5 different ways to spot that you might be in a relationship with a narcissist.
Yeah.
Kimber's got 17 of them located in her book. Year of Thorns, What to Expect When Divorcing a Narcissist. You got to pick up that book. It's on Amazon. In the show notes, I will make sure that there is a direct link directly to there. But Kimber has also something for you as well. You know what? I think I'm going to let you do that, Kimber.
Oh, thank you. So when I went through my divorce, I knew it was going to be bad, but I had no idea the lengths that he would go to destroy me. He tried to put me in jail. Nothing could have prepared me for what I went through in my year of hell. So I created, after my divorce checklist, which is the ultimate survival guide to breaking free of a toxic relationship. And I'm going to offer it free to your listeners and viewers. They click on the link. But in it, it goes over everything that you need to do to prepare before, during, after, the things that you need to go through for your judgment of divorce. Because if it's not in your judgment, or whatever they call it, in your state, which is like your holy Bible, it won't be covered then after the fact. Like, for example, we had 3 children, and under the umbrella of child support, it's just your basic food, shelter, and clothing. But he'd always say, oh, driver's training, that's covered under child support. You know, there's braces, there's video games, there's broken cell phones. Like, there's so many different components to children that it's really important to have all that covered and broken down before or during the process of divorce, because the level of conflict between parents is really, really hard on children. So as much if you can alleviate that through agreements, and this guide will help with that too.
That's outstanding. I'm going to leave a link. The link will be in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it's also going to be in the description. There'll be a link right in there. It'll be a little long, but it's there and it'll be marked. Also, her Facebook page. Yes.
Yeah, I have a Year of Thorns Facebook page. Okay. And yearofthorns.com. It's my blog and website, and there'll be links there too.
Great.
Just Year of Thorns, and it'll look like that.
Yearofthorns.com.
Yep.
You know, I missed that one when doing my research.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. All right, great. Yeah, and she's got her blogs in here. You could buy the book right from there. You can actually contact her right from there. So yes, definitely go to yearofthorns.com. That will also be in the show notes. And there's a way to contact her right there. She has a Facebook page for Year of Thorns. Are you in any other social platforms?
I think I have an Instagram account too. I'm a little bit technically challenged, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
The best way to reach me is through my Year of Thorns. And I also do coaching and things like that too for anybody that may need some help.
Well, that's the giving back part that I love so much, which is what we do here, right? Finding people that are going through these challenges and helping them through it to thrive, survive, and maximize their potential.
I know.
Absolutely. Use it. Yeah. So speaking of YouTube, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and the like button and hit that notification bell so you always know when we're going to go ahead and drop a new episode. And if you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, please go ahead and drop us a review. I don't care if it's a bad review. Matter of fact, that gives us more idea on how I can help evolve the podcast. You can, if you've been listening since episode 1, you'll see that this has definitely evolved in certain ways, remaining true to the message, but it has evolved. So I always love evolving and even more, and that's all up to you. So thank you for doing that. But Kimber, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I hope everybody gets excited about reading A Year of Thorns. And I think you'll really all enjoy it. There's a lot of great information in there. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your guide today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much. And for Kimber and myself, thank you for listening. Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.